And today we're going to look at sweep picking, as you could see from my little warm-up here. Sweep picking is a technique that I don't usually use that often. It's something that I haven't quite figured out how to make it transparent in a musical statement, and it always seems to overwhelm, whatever musical idea I have, and all you hear is the technique. So, but it's still a very useful technique to use, so don't let my limitations with it, prohibit you from actually learning and using it. It's just something that to me sounds hard to make transparent. And it's very useful though, and I used to practice it a lot when I was 15 or 16 when I was starting out. And it's great because it really allows you to go very fast in a way that builds confidence in your fingers and control from your brain to your fingers. So it's still worth your while to learn it. Then if you can make something musical out of it, then perfect. If not, you still have the benefit of the control. So the idea behind sweep picking, as the name says, is that we actually sweep the strings down and up and using as little pick movement as possible. So alternate picking was the opposite. We were always sticking to down, up, no matter what we were doing. As a matter of fact, we had an exercise, I think, on that video that had actual arpeggios. So we were playing F major, and we were actually moving the pick down, up, down, up. And you can see now I'm only playing one note per string. So if I'm doing that, it might be a better way to do it, like down, down, down. And then I cover all these notes with just one movement of the pick. And that's the idea behind sweep picking. The main idea here is that you do it with just one movement. And of course, the first exercises are really just for you to get used to the technique. So what we're going to do is try to make one movement and carry it throughout the whole exercise. Throughout the whole section. So you don't do this. You don't do one pick, two picks, three picks, 4 and 5. You just do one. Okay, the way you do it is when you play slow especially, is to actually let the pick rest on the next string. So if I'm playing the 5th string here, as soon as I play, my pick rests on the next string, which is the 4th one. Then I play the 4th string, and I just let the pick drop to the 3rd one, and so on and so on and so on. And so that's how you do it. But we're going to take it slowly, and we're going to go from the very basic stuff to the more advanced things. So let's move on to exercise number 1. So we're going to start with an exercise that's very simple, and it will really help you to focus on this hand, which is actually the one that does most of the work. Again, using the open strings is a bit of a problem when you learn a technique because the response they have is very different from when you fret a note. Even fretting up the fretboard, will make your strings respond a little differently, but nothing as drastic as when you go from fretted note to open strings. So we're just going to stick to, we're actually going to have to do something with this hand in order to give you that the right feel. So we're just going to do 5, 6, 7, 8, like we did for the warm-ups and for a bunch of other exercises. And what we're going to do is, instead of playing them on one string like we did with alternate picking, we're actually going to adapt it to the sweep picking technique. And sweep picking really works best when you play one note per string. So we're going to spread it out and do 5 on the 4th string, 6 on the 3rd, 7 on the 2nd, and 8 on the 1st. Something like this. Okay, but the difference here is that we use the pick with the sweep picking motion. That means we start with the pick resting on the 4th string, and then we just drop it. And now it touches the 3rd string. Now it touches the 2nd string, I play the 2nd string, and I rest it on the 1st. Then I play the 1st string. So this is my descending movement, like that. Once I reach this spot, I'm going to go all the way up again. So I start with 5 open string, 5 upwards, 6 upwards, 7 up, and 8. And then I start again. 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and we're going to have a close-up of this, but before we get to that, if you want to double check your hand and see if you're doing it properly, resting the pick on the next string, get a mirror, put it in front of you, and just look at this hand. If you see this kind of movement, where you're actually giving it 4 hits, then it's wrong. Even if you go very slow, you should still only see one movement of the hand in both directions. So if I go a bit faster, it's obvious that it's only one movement, and this will be wrong. You see actually 4 discrete picks, and that's wrong. So you just do 1 and 1. Okay, start slow, and let's see it from close up. Alright, so now that you have this under your fingers, we're going to make it just a tiny bit more complicated, and this will again only focus on this hand, but it will allow you to get a feel for the different strings. Alright, so now we cover the 3 light strings, and so we're going to move all the way up to cover all the groups. So we're going to do exactly the same thing. The thing is, every time we do 1, we go up 1 string. So we do the same group as before, but now we start on the 5th string, and then the 6th. And then back it down. So you can kind of make it as a chain and just keep doing it like a loop. And you start again. And it's very useful. And this one you can actually push the speed a little bit once you're comfortable with it. And this will give you a good feel for how it is to play something, you know, more significant with this hand and this at the same time. So don't get stuck too long on just 4 strings, all right? It's not very realistic, and you might actually develop a preference for those strings, and you shouldn't. So as soon as you're ready to, just move on to this second exercise and cover all the strings. And here it is with a very good close-up, and we'll go very slow so you can check it out. One of the most common uses for sweep picking is actually playing arpeggios. That means a chord that we just spread out melodically instead of harmonically. So let's say, for example, E minor, and instead of playing an E minor like this, or maybe even as a triad, but at the same time, you can use this technique to kind of break it up and give the illusion that you're actually playing a melody, but really the underlying information you're giving to the listener is a chord. So that's where I like to use sweep picking the most. And to begin all that is to go back to the basic chords, which is major and minor. And it's really that simple. All you do is select a range of strings, and we're just going to use 3 for now, and just look for the right notes. So if I'm playing E minor, there's 3 strings, so probably I have 3 positions where I can find the chord. One is with the root on the 2nd string, the 3rd, and the 1st. Because of the way the neck is built, you know, the first one I actually find is here with the note with the root on the 2nd string, but depending on whatever root you're looking for, you might find it first on the 1st string or on the third. So the most important thing about these chords and these shapes that I'm giving you is, for example, if I'm giving you E minor, make sure you understand what the root is. Okay, so this is E, and then you can just move this figure wherever you want on the fretboard, right? So if you want to play A minor one day, this is the shape, you just have to make sure that you look for A on the same string that now you have an E. So the root is E, and now I go up, 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 I find an A, and I can play exactly the same figure. Okay? So the first three ones we're going to do are these three. We're going to play 7, 3, 5, 4. This is the first position. Then we're going to move up the neck, and we're going to do E on the 12th string, on the 12th fret of the first string, 7, 8, and 9. And then we're going to do 15, 12, 12, 12. If we were to continue, we'll meet the first position again. Okay, because we only have 3 notes, and 3 notes means 3 positions. I'm going to give you a tab in a second so you can follow along. I'm going to play very slow. But first, let's look at the technique. We start with an upward pick. And then, if you know a bit of legato, you can just release this hand. Otherwise, you can go downstroke. And then you just build your way up just by using upstrokes. So it will be upstroke, legato, upstroke. Then we start the descending part of the exercise. So we do 4 downward, 5 downward, 3 downward, and then I can start again. Up, legato, up, down, down, down. Then we're going to move up, and we're going to have 12, 7, 8, 9. Again, up on the 12th, pull off to the 7, up on the 8th, and then we just go down 9, down 8, down 7. Upwards pick, legato, up, down, down, down. And then on 15, 12, 12, 12, the same thing. 15 upwards, legato, up, down, down, down. Like that. It's pretty simple. And now with the cameras from closer, you'll be able to look at all the details. But it's really that simple. Up, legato, up, down, down, down. And also make sure, please, again, to rest every time you play a note, whatever direction, down and up, you still rest the pick on the next string. Okay, this will help you get real fast, real quick. So now we've done the minor chords, let's look at the major ones. I'm going to leave diminished and augmented to you if you know what they are, and you can just change that note that needs to be changed as you learn right now. The difference between a minor chord and a major chord is the third. So that means that if E minor was E, G, B, all I have to do to make it major, just raise the third, and by third I don't mean the third note, I mean the actual third, so it's E, F, G. So I take the G and I raise it a half step. And then I get a major chord. So now I have E, G sharp, B. If this is a bit confusing, don't worry about it because we're going to have a video just on chords. So we're going to solve all your questions there. For now, just trust me and follow the tabs if you're not too sure about it. So we're going to do 7, 4, 5, 4. And then we take the exact same positions as before, just every time we meet a G, we just raise it up. So before we were doing 12, 7, 8, 9. Now we have to find the G, which is on the 8th fret, move it up 1 fret, and we're in major. Which sounds a lot happier than minor. And then we were doing 15, 12, 12, 12 before, and now we're going to do 16, 12, 12, 13. Okay? Just like that. And I'm going to play for you each one, but again, the technique is really exactly the same as before. Upwards, legato, up, down, down, down. Upwards, legato, up, and down, down, down. And again, up. Just like that. One thing you might notice, if you actually do what I said before and try to move positions around, again, you might run into uncomfortable positions. For example, if I take this position here and I move it down here, it's a bit of a stretch. All right, so don't force it. Work your way down real slow until you can play it. So let's check this out and slow, and then we're going to move on to more intricate things. So now you've got those little 3-string shapes under your fingers. We can just continue up on the fretboard and use more strings and just basically complete the chord. And you could actually make 6-string arpeggios out of pretty much anything, but we're just going to stick to the root, all right? So whenever we find the root, that's where we start. And that means that a few of these shapes will have 5 strings and some others will have 6. So I'm just going to show you now which are which. And the idea here is really basic. So we're playing just the notes of E minor, which are E, G, and B. And all I have to do is start with what I had before, which is B, G, E, B, and then just look for whatever notes I'm missing in the right order. So if I'm doing descending, I'm doing B, G, E, B, and I have to find a G, which is here on the 5th fret of the 4th string. And then I can follow along and find an E on the 7th fret of the 5th string. So this whole position will be something like this. Okay? And when you play, the same exact principles apply. You're still doing one movement, a little legato here, and then one movement to come up. So now that you're watching this, you might have noticed that I'm actually doing exactly what we said we were going to do when we did alternate picking. When we play only one string, the only thing that moves is the wrist. And when we move from one string to the next, what carries the wrist to the right string is the arm. So if you notice when I'm playing this arpeggio, I'm only playing with almost exclusively with my arm. So the wrist doesn't move here, it doesn't move here, here. I have a little movement here because I'm doing down up, and then it's one big arm movement. Okay, so the wrist doesn't move at all. Let's continue with the next shape, which was this one. We had the 12, 7, 8, 9, which were E, B, G, E, and we just keep going and look for more notes. So we have to find a B, which is right above it on the 9th fret of the 4th string. We have a G here on the 10th fret of the 5th string, and then we have an E on the 7th fret. So we have this shape. And this brings us to another issue, which is the roll. Roll is when you actually have to play 2 two notes that are on, one string right next to the other, but also on the same fret. So you don't have time to do this, to jump. You can do it when you play slow, but when you speed it up, you just don't have time to do it. All right? And so how do we do it? The idea here is that you put your finger down in a position that will allow you to play both without actually pressing both at the same time, because then we'll get this, and we don't want that. So ascending, we'll do 7, 10, 9, we just played as we usually would, and then I just roll the finger down. And this will be clear when you see the close-up, but as you can see, I'm playing with the flat part of my finger, but this string is not being pressed at all. See that? So this one, unless I, do something wrong, it won't sound at all. And I get to keep this fluid sound and play adjacent strings. When you go from the first string to the top, you have to do it backwards. So you start by putting your finger just a bit flatter than usual, and then bring it up. And it will sound great. So this will check out again when we do the close-up. And then the final position, which was 15, 12, 12, 12, we continue, and we actually reach the 6th string, and the root will be right at the beginning of the chord. And as you can see, there's a lot of parts now where we actually need the roll thing, so that's something you have to practice. I'm going to show it to you from close-up now, all the minor chords with 5 and 6 string shapes. Very well, now we're going to do exactly the same thing, but instead of doing it with minor, we do it with major, so I won't go into all the detail. If you ever run into a roll, you have to do it the same as with minors. All we do now is just find every E, G sharp, and B, and work our way up. So the first shape is like this. The second shape is like this. And the third shape is like this. And that's really not much to say here. Just maybe with this one, you could do actually either this or with this finger. I always prefer, as we said in the very first video, I prefer using, when I stretch the hand, I prefer using the second finger, but you're free to try with both and see what you like best. So let's go straight to the close-up of this. There shouldn't be any new issues, but do it a few times by watching the video. I'll go very slow and I'll make it as clear as possible. And always keep an eye on this hand. One movement down, one movement up. That's the whole point. A good use of arpeggios and sweep picking is to actually imply a chord progression. Okay, as we said, usually what you do is actually play chords, but you spread them out melodically. So you can actually do this to follow any kind of progression you might want to imply. So let's say, for example, I'm playing, I want to play C major to F major, for example. What I can do is just go about the guitar and try to find a position that fits C major, maybe like this one. And then see if I can come up with something that's close to it that implies F major. So maybe I could do, okay, so I'm playing an F major chord now. And then maybe I can go to D minor. And go up to A minor. And then maybe G major. And then that back to C. Okay, so what you heard is really this kind of stuff. These are the chords that your ear associates with the sound of the arpeggio. And so one great exercise is to actually take any major scale you know, or actually any other scale, and harmonize it with these arpeggios. So if we take D major, what we'll have is these 7 chords, which are D major, E minor, F sharp minor, we'll have G major, A major, we'll have B minor. Now we have C sharp diminished, which we're gonna get into more details in later on, and then we're gonna have D major again. So all together it looks something like this. I'm gonna play it medium speed, not too fast, so you can follow along. Alright, so I covered the whole fretboard and I played all the possible chords. There's one thing that you might notice with this is that as you start moving from one arpeggio to the next, you never quite know how far you have to move. Because say, for example, instead of using it, doing it actually step by step, maybe I wanted to play C major, D major, and then just jump to this chord, F sharp minor. Okay, so these movements, you have to control what you want to do. You can do a slide, or you can jump. Sorry, not like that. Like this is better. All right, so try both options. Try this, which is cool sometimes, or try this. And you get to the right note, and you shouldn't be able to hear the slide. Both are useful, and they should be at your disposal for whatever you want to do. One more thing we might want to look at, this is a good time as any, is when you use distortion with sweep picking. It's a technique that's very prone to unwanted noises. So I'm going to go all the way. I'm going to put more distortion than is advisable, as you can hear. And you should still try to get a good, decent sound out of this, okay? So this is really over the top, and it's more than you'll ever need. But you should still be able to produce decent sounds. Okay, so it's a good way of practicing actually is to sometimes when you have something really ready and done with a clean sound, go all the way up with the distortion. Try to control it and then scale the distortion down to whatever you're used to. And you should have a proper, good technique that is clean and usable. So let's check this whole thing out by getting the cameras a bit closer and let you see all the details. So one of the best uses for me for sweep picking is to actually build unusual chords and be able to reach them. Usually when you play chords, you're really limited to having to find all the notes pretty close to each other, because that's the way the hand is built. And you have to really, first of all, it limits the number of notes you can play. Chords that use 6 strings meaningfully, which means we don't repeat the same note a bunch of times, are few. And usually you're limited maybe 4 or 5 strings. And when you're playing those, also you're limited by the fact that you only have 4 fingers. So sometimes you want to add one more note, but you take this finger out of here, then that note gets lost, and so on. Now sweep picking allows you to actually do it because you can move the hand. Once I play this note, I don't have to worry about it anymore. I don't have to hold it down. I can do all this, which is impossible to play at the same time. There's just too many notes. I would need a lot of fingers for that. And so one thing I like to do is break a chord apart, see what notes I need for that chord, and then just spread them out throughout the fretboard. And the best way to practice this is to actually build chords. So if you find a chord that you like, all you have to do is just break it up and see, well, how far can I go with it with a regular position? And then how far can I go with it by assigning one note per string? You can repeat sometimes the same note on different strings, or you can actually use huge chords that have 6 notes. I have a couple of examples for you. One we could do is maybe this one. It's a really cool chord, and it's you can play it, normally, but you have to sacrifice a few notes. But now I can play the root, I can play the 5th, the 9th, I can play the 3rd, I can play the major 7th, and I can play the augmented 11th. Okay, so actually this chord, it would be called an E major 9th, sharp 11th. And I can play like this very fluid just by using this technique. If you want to do minor, maybe we can do something else. Maybe we could do... And this brings me to another interesting point, that the fact that you're playing with sweep picking doesn't force you to use it always. You can actually play a shape and you like the way it sounds, and I want to play 2 notes on one string, then I can do that. So now I'm playing 2 notes on the 3rd string, 9 and 10, then I'm going down to the 2nd string and I'm playing 10, 12. Okay? You can see here the overall technique is sweep picking, but I'm just making it work for me. So if I want to add a note, I'll add it. And this goes back to what we were saying in the beginning. I don't really use the technique in a way that's standard. I just don't do arpeggios down and up that often. But it's really useful for this kind of stuff. And this I do a lot of. So again, make it work for you, whatever you like. If you like the shreddy stuff, go ahead and do that. If you like the more melodic things, just do it, or come up with something for yourself. So I'm going to give you a quick close-up of these chords just to let you see all the little details, and then we'll move on to another really cool feature of sweep picking. And this is another use of sweep picking that's not usually associated with it, but it's sometimes it's called alternative picking or hybrid picking, and we kind of put names to things, and then we figure out some other guy has put a different name on it. So for me, it's really a continuation of sweep picking, and the idea is that we play scales, and this works perfectly for 3-note per string scales, so where we're actually playing the same notes as a major scale. So in this case, I'm playing C, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. But I just assign 3 notes on each string. So I go C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, and so on. And these scales, obviously, if we were using alternate picking, because they always have 3 notes per string, you'll be doing down, up, down, and then you go up, down, up, and then down, and then up. So you start each string alternating between down and up strokes. And one great way to play them sometimes, if you want a really smooth descending thing like the thing I just played, is to just, every time you change string, go down. So it will be down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. And you still alternate within the string, but the feel, with your hand will be very different from this. This is alternate, so I keep jumping around and doing down and up. This one, you see I'm just kind of dropping the hand and just hold it on each string just as long as I need to play this upstroke. As soon as I play it, I let it drop. With the same technique I use for sweep picking. If you do it upwards, it's exactly the same thing. Just start going up. So it's up, down, up. And then instead of going down on the next string as you would with alternate picking, you go up again. So you see how this movement is really in the arm more than the wrist. If I were doing alternate picking, it would pretty much be all in the wrist. And it's really smooth, a really smooth sound. And we're going to go to close-up now, but I'm going to do it with a clean tone and very, very slow. And you try to figure out the technique for it and really try to make it comfortable for you. You can apply it to pretty much anything, so they don't have to be 3 notes per string. But when you go into mixed positions, they sometimes have 2 notes, sometimes they have 3. It's a little bit more complicated because it's harder to get into the rhythm. You can still do it, it would just sound a bit different. So let's switch to close-up. And this next exercise is the final one for this video, and again it's a scale, but I just made it a bit more complicated by breaking the pattern of 3 notes per string, and so now we're actually playing almost always 3 notes, but on a couple of strings we're playing 4 notes, and we're actually going over the usual octave count that we can have by using 3 notes per string and making it a lot longer. So we're doing something like this. We go 5, 7, 8, 5, 7, 8, and then 6, 7, 9, 10, which is also another added difficulty. You have to displace your hand. And at the end of the phrase, here, you have to kind of close the hand and then hit the 9th fret and open it up again, because you need the other fingers to complete the pattern. Okay, so it looks something like this at medium tempo. Okay, as you can see, it's very smooth, and it's really dependent on this hand. It really depends on whether you have this worked out yet or not. So it's a good spot to end this video, and all the things we've done in this video can be applied to pretty much anything. If you like certain tonalities, if you like minor scales over major scales, or different kind of arpeggios, with what you have now, which again I try to keep as general and universal as possible, so as not to influence your playing. And also you should avoid becoming a guitar player that plays like exercises. So I like to keep my exercises very, very separate from whatever that I like to play musically. And so you can just apply the concepts and the principles to whatever you want to do. And so I'm going to show you this technique to you from close-up, this final exercise, and then we'll wrap it up. well. Well, congratulations for reaching the end of this session too. And please go ahead and practice everything you've seen in this video. If you're having any problems with any of the parts, just go back to the previous one, to the previous one, to the previous one. We're actually trying to give you everything you need, but it's really important that you take your time, so you don't try to rush it. You know, maybe, yes, I know all of you will actually check out all the exercises independently of your current level, but once you have, really go back and do it in the proper order and spend whatever time you need into each, for each block, and that will really help you out to master the whole thing. And then, of course, explore, branch out, and do whatever you want to do because it's your music after all. Thanks for watching and see you next time.